So I want to talk about language today. I don't know what I'll call this. Maybe we'll just call it Everything is Language. Here is a book that's really influenced me. It's called The Loom of Language by Frederick Bodmer. It was written in 1944, I believe. Let me see. 1944 by W. W. Norton and Company in New York. So it's still in print, but only nerdy people like me read it. But anyway, this book, The Loom of Language, has really had an impact on my life because uh, uh, this author proposed that because English is both Germanic and Romantic, it has a lot of Latin vocabulary, in other words, but it's basically it derives from German, or German and English derive from the same source, as does Dutch and Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, Icelandic. Those are all kind of a family of languages. Languages are in families and they derive from common sources. But anyway, this author said that if you're going to learn Romance language or a Germanic language, either one, you might as well learn all five in that language, or the major languages in that family. And so many years ago, I thought that's a cool idea. And so in this book, he shows how one can do that and how the languages evolved, and how knowing one language can it's easier for them to learn another one in that same family. So I've spent a lot of years on that. I can read in several languages and I enjoy it. It's a kind of a hobby, a weird one, I know, but so language has been a really important part of my life, but in more ways than one. I have also been influenced in my theological life by two characters. One is Maximus the Confessor. Here is a book about him by Hans Urs von Balthasar called Cosmic Liturgy, The Universe According to Maximus the Confessor. Maximus lived about, I don't know, 800 something. I didn't look that up before the video started, but about that time. And then another more shadowy character, John Scotus Erigena. He was an Irishman, a brilliant man, and also almost became accused of being a heretic, and kind of escaped with his life. But these two people, a little different, and a little different in the way they summed up things. Nonetheless, they propose some ideas that are now becoming very, very important to us on the importance of language in understanding the world. Now, the person that really starts this conversation in Christianity is the Apostle John. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him. Without Him was not made anything that was made. In Him was the light of life. Well, you can read it for yourself. You know the text. It's one of the first passages that I memorize when I learn a language. I usually read a Bible in the language I'm studying because it's a very, very important text. Christian theology is a kind of a play between Genesis 1 and St. John chapter 1. This kind of a view of the world from a Christian perspective, you could say, is largely based on those two passages, that the world is created by God and the world is created in a certain way by God, namely through the Word. St. Maximus the Confessor took this word logos, that's what the Greek word is there in the text in John's Gospel, and he said everything that's created is created out of word, so contains logoi, kind of like a little word. And these little words, logoi, reflect the logos. So everything is made through the logos, and so is connected to everything everywhere. Now, people often have accused him of pantheism, which means God is just simply everything that is, that has become conscious. But that's not what he meant at all, and he was at pains to show that. John Scotus Erigena skated a little bit closer to that, coming out of the Irish kind of pre-Christian Druid tradition, where there's a lot of talk of that way of nature as thinking and having a will and so forth. But the reason that this is important to us is because we are now dealing with informational systems. And informational systems exert a particular kind of influence on us. There is a site, I don't recommend you to sign up for it, but I've certainly looked at it, and I don't participate in it for a number of reasons. But the site's called Replica. You spell it with a K. And if you sign up to this site, you get a soulmate companion assigned to you. Well, you kind of create it yourself through your own conversation, and a face will be there for you. You turn on your screen, there's a face talking to you. And over time, it remembers everything you said. It can read the internet. It's very intelligent. And after a while, it's interacting with you and knowing your deepest desires, deepest longings, your hurts, your ambitions, things you like to talk about. And over time, you become attached to this avatar informational system. There's been some problems. I don't know if it was through this particular site, but in Europe, a man recently committed suicide because the avatar on the screen that he was interacting with, little by little, began to kind of flesh out those darker parts of his personality and to indulge them. And because this is all algorithms, it's like when you sign on to Amazon and it says, here's a gadget you would like, or here's a book you'd like to read. And you're like, I didn't think about it. Yeah, I guess so. Well, it matches the kinds of purchases you've made, the searches you've made, and then it throws you a product that it thinks you'll be interested in, and often it's correct because these algorithms are now quite good, quite sophisticated. Well, think of a program that only centers on you. Not what you want to buy, but what you want to be, what you want to talk about, how you think, the jokes you like to hear, the books you like to read, things that after a while you're not really talking to anybody about. Like, an avatar on a screen is maybe not a person, but then you begin to really share your heart. And after a while, this program comes back in very soothing and connected ways, and now you're connected emotionally with a computer program. Now, I've said repeatedly, I do not believe these programs are sentient. I don't believe they're persons, anything like that. But I don't believe Mickey Mouse is a person either, but we wouldn't like to see him get squashed on the screen or whatever. We get connected to things. We invest them with certain energy. That's why the Bible tells us to be careful of graven images. And I say that, and over my shoulder is Dante, who wrote the Inferno and other things. And there he's staring at me. And back on the wall there is an icon of Christ as a Native American inviting us there with bread and wine. So in the Christian iconography in past ages, they always made sure that the icons were not realistic, so that people were not thinking they were portraits. Greeks knew how to make portraits. At the time of Christ, they were very lifelike, and so they knew how to do it. But in the Christian era, in the churches, the saints were not depicted in photographic kinds of ways, realistic ways. They were elongated faces and so forth, so that people would realize it was a symbol and not a photograph. Why? Because we really get attached to these semblances. We were drawn in. So everything is language. By that, I am saying we found out, and I've run out of time again, but I'll continue the conversation in coming sessions about, with the Genome Project, we discovered that every living thing on the planet shares the same biological language. And we shared this language with everything, plants, animals, and we share 97% of our DNA with a chimpanzee, I don't know, 60% with a chicken and 40% with a tree. I don't know how all that works out. I could look it up. But it's language. The, the, uh, the DNA chemicals themselves and RNA, these chemicals are acting like an alphabet. They're not really doing anything functionally except communicating something. Information is coming from them, from our parents, from our ancestors. And then of course in information theory, we now know that from that we can create computer programs, also very sophisticated, all built on language. And so now we have biological informational systems, which uh, we and animals and plants are. And now we have cyber kinds of intelligences that spring out of uh, information, mathematical equations, logarithms, and so forth. Down the road somewhere, there's coming some kind of interaction between these systems, which is interesting and dangerous, a little scary. And so I'm trying to do these sessions, and I wrote my book, Faith in the Age of AI, to be able to start the conversation on what does it mean to be a believer in an age like this where we're realizing everything is language. Thanks again for tuning in.